Hello all, another season of All Out War is underway. Many different synergies are available for players, and in these videos I will be going in depth into the specific formation, how it scales, and in future videos compare them to other lineups we will cover. As this is the first video, why don't I set the tone of what we can expect. For this video we'll be covering a full crit-based build with their excellent single target power focus. With the commanders I will be going over are Jaime or Sererr, Dana and Baelish. I'll cover their synergy and power as a whole, and later cover if their troop conversion for all-out war has a significant impact on them, so let's begin. To start, the enabler of this synergy being Jaime or Sererr, both allowing commanded troops to launch critical attacks. Their damage effectively add up to be the same, but their chance difference is drastic for Dana, who after every critical attack increases spearman attack by 1,500%. With the final commander Baelish allowing commanded troops a 40% chance to have an additional attack. This is a full attack extra which can also trigger critical attacks too. Since these are all done passively, their skills sort or their commander lineup matters less compared to female cavalry lines, or even the counterattack infantry lines where you want Jon to trigger when most enemies are attacking you, or with female having Sanelle trigger her commander damage buff right before your main damage commander. This is a considerable advantage as their main damage will be quickly stacked and their damage will quickly diminish the enemy before their main damage source triggers, which is especially powerful against female lineups. How about we get into some actual damage numbers? To standardize it among all videos, we will say the base attack stat will be 2000%. Jaime and Sererr's critical chances do play a role in stacking Dany's buff, and more importantly keeping max stacks on it. Their individual damage for the lineup over 10 attacks is simply a 30% boost to damage, or from 10 to 13 normal attacks worth of damage. In percentage this is from 20,000 to 26,000. It is a significant jump considering many players will have Jaime and his active will boost your attack by 1800% for 5 seconds. But we will talk about their active skills more later. For now, the real buffer of the lineup, Dana. It is much easier to max her spear buff with Sererr, but still manageable with Jaime. With Sererr on average her max buff will consistently be achieved by the 7 to 8 second mark, and with Jaime this will depend on you luck. But you will at least be having 1 stack of spearman attack consistently, with it occasionally swinging to 2, and if you're really lucky 3 stacks, though rarely really benefiting from it. Don't be deterred just yet. We have yet to talk about Baelish and his impact. But moving back, this will mean with Sererr line you will have damage buff of up to 6,500% with 60% of your hits dealing a 1.5 times multiplier of this. Makes it easy to work out the damage, which will be after 8 seconds your next 10 normal attacks will deal a total of 84,500 damage. With Jaime it will be different. We can say he hits his crits at the 3rd, 6th and 10th second of the battle. This would mean he will still get 1 to 2 attacks with a second stack of Dany's buff. I'll be generous and say 4 attacks will be at 2 stacks, and at least 2 of these will be crits, which will mean your spearman over 10 attacks will deal 51,000 damage. This number should be more of a range, and you could get 3 instant crits right off the bat and deal large amount of damage at the start and continually stack buffs, or you could get unlucky and not crit for a while at all. Should note that for both lines I did avoid the damage windup you lose, as your first crit will be on your base damage, and not with any stacks of Dana, as compared to your 3rd crit having an extra 3,000% spearman attack behind it. But we want to know the continual damage of the lineup, especially for Lost Realms, and I will do this for every other lineup, thinking of the max output potential of the lineup, and if there are major halts to these, as we will talk about in other lineup videos, I will mention them. And I should also note that comparing the two is a little unfair, since Sererr will practically always get Dana to max stacks and his crits will benefit from this too. Now we get to add Baelish. To simplify it and display the effect still accurately, we will assume the additional attacks happen at the 2nd and 5th attacks, so 2 seconds, 5, 7 and 10. Alone he OS a 40% damage increase just from his passive. And the real impact OS the increase in effect crit chance per attack for both Jaime and Sererr. He will boost each attack to being effectively a 42% chance and an 84% chance for Jaime and Sererr to trigger their crits. Before speaking of their damage, the impact this will have with Dana. The increase with Jaime means he will consistently keep 2 stacks up and occasionally hit a 3rd with decent benefit, as compared to previously keeping 1 stack and occasionally benefiting from a 2nd. Luck can range, and the start of your battle can be stalled just due to not hitting any crits. But when I talk about this 42% chance with Jaime, I will use the same 2-second, 5-second scale as with Baelish to better visualize it for everyone. But now we have effective damage of 18.2 normal attacks worth, and adding max stacks and the 2-stack consistency with Jaime, we get the total damage figure of 118,300 for Saoirse, and 91,000 damage with Jaime, though this can jump higher with enough luck on your crits. To better compare these commanders and really show the power difference between them, we will go by the expected damage of Jaime rather than the lucky max potential, as it realistically does not always happen. But now for the real impact on this lineup, Baelish and his active skill. Being a versatile commander, but he will really shine within this lineup. As mentioned, his passive of 40% chance to trigger an additional attack is already insane for this lineup, and his active, for 5 seconds increasing normal attack damage by 180%. This is a straight 2.8 times multiply on your damage. Not just your base damage, but every passive buff your line has is going to be amplified, which means yes, max Dana stacks and critical attacks are multiplied. I'll start with Jaime line. With his crits and Dina averaging now a consistent 2 spearman attack buffs, the average damage will be 5,000%, and when Baelish triggers this will jump up to 14,000%, with the additional attacks too, which will average to be 7 total attacks with this buff. And considering critical attacks will be 2.1 attacks, or for this we will say 2 out of your 7 attacks at 200% crit damage, our total will be 126,000% damage. This is only going to get better once we replace Jaime with Saoirse, who will constantly have 3 stacks of Dina's spearman attack buff. Now our damage starts from 6,500%. With Baelish passive and active added, and considering Saoirse's crit with a higher proc rate but lower damage, this line's total damage for the 5 seconds will be 163,800% spearman attack. It is crazy what the top lineups are capable of, and although this is the first video I have done talking about these lineups and synergy, I do want to show how powerful in the number sense these armies are and provide ways to combat them, which for this line is simple, it is just overwhelming them. Oh, and while I am here, I did say I would talk about their troop conversion. This max crit build is weak against multiple targets. Well, no, it is not weak when you can stack up to 6,500% damage. You would deal crazy damage to all of your opponents, but their troop conversion for all-out war simply reduces damage they take by 5%, 30% pincer attack reduction, and their skill attack deal 25% less damage. So really it is just making you effect at fighting against multiple foes, which should have been the main downside of this lineup. I would say even outside of all-out war, without this troop conversion you would still be more than capable of fighting against groups of enemies still, despite your synergy's main strength against a single target. Being so focused on single attack damage, it really does not have much else going for it, unlike future lines I will be talking about. To suggest what order you should be placing these commanders, I would say the only required commander placement is Baelish. You have a good 10 seconds before your first skill is triggered, so within that time your line would have already gotten max stacks from Dana passive buff. Overall, a dominant lineup in one-on-one combat situations, and especially for Lost Realms bosses. Perhaps the best lineup for the event. Anyways, bye-bye.